Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host as always, Daniel Levi, your co-host Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC Fresno, Cub Swanson versus Brian Ortega. And Shaq, it's going down this weekend. We got the undefeated Brian Ortega taking on the vet Cub Swanson.
Cub Swanson, one of the best to ever do it at 145. He's got some good wins over Jeremy Stevens, over Hakran Diaz, over Duho Choi,
Dustin Poirier.
I mean, the guy, he's made a career doing this. And Brian Ortega can take his spotlight, man. If Ortega wins his fight, I mean, he might get a title shot. I mean, the guy's undefeated. I was very impressed with his win against Renato Moicano. I did not see that coming, and I'm interested to see if he's going to pull this one off again.
And before we talk about this main event between Brian T-City Ortega and Cub Swanson, we got to give out our third back-to-back-to-back max bet winner right here, right now on Half the Battle. You know, we gave out that Yan Zonan max bet, that Razak Al Hassan max bet, and now it's time to give our third one in 3 consecutive weeks because we got Davi Ramos. He's minus 360. The comeback on Chris Grutzemacher is plus 300. Now, I know we took a side. I know the line isn't where it once was, but there's a reason we're taking a certain side here, isn't that right?
Yeah, man. You know, I had a feeling the odds makers would totally forget about this fight on the opener. You know, I felt like they'd pay attention to the other fights, and they did. You know, I had a feeling they'd open up Davi Ramos real close, and I've had my eye on this spot for about a month now. Davi Ramos, ADCC champion, 2-time Pan Am Jiu-Jitsu champion. I mean, the guy's Jiu-Jitsu's credentials are ridiculous. I mean, this guy beat Gilbert Burns in a Jiu-Jitsu match.
Via submission.
He actually subbed him, not on points. He actually submitted him. And on the feet. I mean, Davi's hand-fighting game's on point, his parrying game's on point, and he swings big, heavy bombs inside the pocket. And I feel like Grutzemacher's game plays right into it. Grutzemacher's going to get right in his face like he always does. He's got that typical MMA lap style. They like to rely on their ability to eat shots and, you know, hopefully their opponent gasses. But that's not the case with Davi because I've seen Davi go 3 rounds against Nick Piedmont, who in my opinion is a better striker than Grutzemacher. And, you know, Grutzemacher on the tough show, you know, he's got some, when he gets you, you know what I'm saying? He's got that grueling style. But, I mean, let's not forget the guy got knocked out by Artem Lobov. His fight on the tough finale against Abner Lavares was a back-and-forth fight, let's put it this way, both men wobbled, you know what I'm saying? And Grutzemacher wobbled hard to a left hook. And the way I see this fight playing out, I see Davi having him beaten every aspect of the game on the feet. I think he's way too big for Grutzemacher. I think he's going to rough him up. I think when Grutzemacher gets in his face with his chin up in the air, I think Davi's going to hand fight and land a big left hook, right hook combo and wobble him and then take his back and submit him. Like I said, the jiu-jitsu credentials are there. Multiple-time BJJ champion. Grutzemacher, I mean, you can't rely on your ability to eat shots for so long, man. I feel like Davi has several backup plans just in case, you know, we saw a different Grutzemacher, which I doubt, but I feel like we can tie him up against the fence. We're way stronger. We can take him down whenever we want, and I feel like Davi Ramos is going to get his first UFC win, and I think it's going to be a finish.
Yeah, so I also took the opening line, the minus 180. I put 5 units on it. Sorry to everyone for ruining that line, but it is what it is. And, you know, Davi Ramos is one of these guys that, you know, he was 5'6" fighting at welterweight, but you see him in there, you see his presence. He doesn't seem like any 5'6" guy, you know what I'm saying?
He actually looked like a welterweight, and I mean, if you're seeing pictures of him now, the guy looks fucking shredded, man. And, you know, I put 7 units on him, man. I was that confident. I honestly should have put more, but, you know, I'm going to play it like there's an opportunity coming up in a couple of weeks.
I'm going to play it live by putting 7 units on it.
You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, I put 10 units on Yan Zhao, put 10 units on Randy Brown, and I honestly feel more confident in this one than I did those. But, you know, it is what it is, like Max Holloway says. And I think Davi Ramos is going to absolutely butcher him.
Yeah, so like I said, I put 5 units on the minus 180, and it's interesting. One guy's coming up from 45, one guy's coming down from 170. Davi Ramos, like we mentioned, he tapped out Gilbert Burns in pure jiu-jitsu. When you talk about Chris Grutzemacher, you're talking about a walking punching bag. And yeah, I know he's at ATT for this fight, but to me, you know, for a lot of people, that might give them confidence. Hey, I'm going to take this underdog Chris Grutzemacher. He's training at ATT. The way I look at it is, oh, so you're telling me he's Dustin Poirier's punching bag now? You're telling me he's Jorge Masvidal's punching bag now? It's like, okay, man, because before, I think the rounds he was getting at the lab were probably better for his health. You know, he's getting in there with Scott Holtzman, he's getting in there with the ghost of Benson Henderson, but now you're in there with Dustin Poirier every day. That ain't it's not going to look too good when he comes in here, man.
Wang Guan, Mark DeCasey, you know what I'm saying? Enrique Barzola, I see him training with Enrique and Mark DeCasey. They're just softening up that chin for me, man, and Davi Ramos is going to take full advantage.
What I like about Davi is that, you know, for the short guys, he's got that hand-fighting game down, like you mentioned, man. The parrying game is on point. And not only that, what's most important to me, because I was under the impression that he gasses out after the first round, I was completely wrong. He had the cardio to go all three hard against Serginho in his UFC debut, up a weight class. So the cardio isn't going to be an issue here. And when Grutzemacher comes forward, it's going to be, the openings are going to be right there. He's going to give us the openings to bomb on him. If we want to take him down, we're going to take him down. But most likely, we're going to knock him out standing because we have multiple punch combinations, the explosiveness that we're dealing with, the athleticism. It's on a completely different level than Chris Grutzemacher. He's just going to walk into a big shot, and he's either going to get beat up for 3 straight rounds or he's going to, you know, get knocked out like he did against Artem Lobov. And once again, I got Davi Ramos 5 units, minus 180. Now, I understand someone being a little hesitant at minus 360 because that's close to $2, you know, of less value. You know what I'm saying? It's about $1.80 less than what we got it at, so I completely understand someone passing. But the pick, the bet is 100% Davi Ramos here. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got Iuri Alcantara. He's minus 210. The comeback on Alejandro Turbo Perez is plus 175. Now, you think our boy Alejandro is about to weasel, or is our other boy Iuri going to put him out in the first?
You know, Alejandro, like I said before his fight with Andre Soukhamthath, the guy is one of the best weaselers in the game, and you need solid weasels on your team in this betting game. You need guys that, you know, can get dropped twice in 1 round and still win the round. And I mean, his weasel game in that Andre Soukhamthath fight was absolutely amazing because, if we're being honest, Andre probably won every round of that fight, but it is what it is. Alejandro, the difference is, you know, when Soukhamthath dropped him, he cleanly dropped him, and Soukhamthath, you know, played around and let him back up. But the thing is, when Alejandro got a alleged knockdown, it really wasn't a knockdown, but he made it look like a knockdown. He hopped in his guard and, you know, killed a minute or 2 of clock time, so that round's his now. And that's the type of weasel you need on your team. So, you know, before his fight with Soukhamthath, I said that his days of weaseling were over, and I was clearly wrong, and he weaseled again. I mean, we're talking about a guy that clearly lost 2 rounds to Albert Morales and still got a draw. He got a point deducted. So the judges thought he won 2 rounds, you know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous, but I mean, he keeps finding a way to do it. And, you know, Iuri Alcantara, I mean, on paper, has him beat in every aspect, in my opinion. But the thing is, Iuri Alcantara is slowing. He took a severe beating his last fight against Luke Sanders. I mean, he got...
Oh, that's why it was Kelleher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Kelleher. But the fight before that, and yeah, he got choked out by Kelleher. You know, but Yuri's more explosive. I mean, we've seen Iuri knock out Ricardo Lamas at 155. We've seen him destroy Brad Pickett, beat Leandro Issa. I mean, the guy is one of the best to do it as well. And he's training at Jackson's for this fight. Alejandro's training at AKA with other guys on the card. And I'm going to take Alejandro on this one, man. He keeps finding a way to weasel. He keeps finding a way to lose rounds but win them on the cards. And, you know, Yuri's the type of guy that type of shit works against. I mean, Iuri finds himself on his back. I mean, let's not forget about the Frankie Saenz fight when he was like minus 700. And, you know, Frankie straight took it to him for 3 rounds. And I think Alejandro will probably get dropped at some point, rocked hard, find a way to get on top and steal the rounds, maybe. And, you know, not to mention, a lot of Alejandro's opponents get points deducted. The Teco Quinones fight. And, you know, I wouldn't be shocked if Iuri, you know, landed an illegal knee while, you know, Alejandro was trying to play that 3-point hand thing on the mat or something like that.
And Alejandro milks it.
And Alejandro milks it and falls to his back like, you know, wow. You know what I'm saying? Typical weasel style. And, I'm going to go Alejandro by split decision.
Yeah, man. You know, if I wasn't betting on Davi Ramos, I'd definitely take, you know, a 1 or 2 unit shot on Alejandro Perez here because what I think is going to happen, well, firstly, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, you know I'm a hardcore Iuri Alcantara fan. I mean, this dude knocked out Ricardo Lamas in the WEC. He's a total badass. I love his style. But, man, he's getting up there in age. He's about 38 years old now, and that fight against Luke Sanders definitely took some mileage, definitely took some durability off of him. I'll tell you that right now, man. And you saw that last one with Brian Kelleher. Let's not even talk about that, shitty ass takedown he shot where he got choked out. Let's talk about the stand-up exchanges, man. He's looking a lot slower than he used to be, because I mean, this dude was fucking dynamic in his prime, man. Double flying knees, spinning elbows, drops you with everything. He's got the reach of a light heavyweight, man. You know what I'm saying? And I remember when he made that UFC debut against Felipe Aranches, and I was like, damn, this dude's got like the same reach as Shogun, So I'm a hardcore Iuri Alcantara fan. Love that dude. I hope he retires in the UFC. With Alejandro, man, from a betting perspective, he keeps on weaseling these decisions. I'm like, oh my god, man. Like that Andre Soukhamthath fight, he got dropped 3 times and he still won the fight, And that Albert Morales fight clearly lost, but got a draw. I'm like, man. Even the Teco Quinones fight, I thought he lost that fight too, and somehow found a way to win. So I respect that quality a lot in a fighter. We're not going to talk about the Patrick Williams debacle where he got stopped in 20 seconds, right? Because that could totally happen here. So it's about either Iuri's going to finish this in the first round, or Iuri's going to come out hard in the first round. Alejandro's going to weather that storm and then come back and win the next 2 rounds. So I'm going to go with Alejandro Perez by majority decision. And like I said, if I didn't bet on Davi Ramos, I would be taking a small shot on Perez as an underdog. Now, next up, also in the bantamweight division, we got Merab Dvalishvili. He's minus 155. The comeback on Frankie Saenz is plus 135. Now, we got the newcomer coming out of Serra Longo. He trains with Aljo every single day. Do you think it's going to be enough to take out the vet that beat Iuri Alcantara, Frankie Saenz?
And Frankie Saenz, man, it's unfortunate how the fight game treats these guys, especially these bantamweights that are 36 and 37 years old, because at one point Frankie Saenz was, in there. I thought he arguably beat Faber, to be honest. Those leg kicks he was landing against Faber, Faber's leg was buckling real hard. And, honestly, I feel like that was his swan song. I feel like that was his final hoorah. And we saw the next fight after that against Eddie Wineland. He was doing good, and then, boom, one shot, he was knocked out. And then I watched his fight with Augusto Mendez the other day, and I was like, wow, this definitely ain't the same guy anymore. I mean, he's getting rocked by, 5'5" jiu-jitsu guys, and he fought tough, but it's definitely not the same guy. It's not the same guy that beat Iuri Alcantara. It's not the same guy that beat Serwan Kakai. It's not the same guy that went in there and gave Faber the fight of his life. I know the opener was minus 150. I put 3 units on Merab Dvalishvili. It's more of a Frankie Saenz fade, just because when I watched that Augusto fight, man, I was completely shocked. I was like, wow. I mean, this guy's chin cannot hold up. He's getting rocked with little soft shots, and I think Merab, they'll fill each other out, and eventually Merab will land a left hook and wobble Frankie, and I feel like that will either keep him up on the cards or he'll get a finish. Merab has got very good wrestling. He's from Georgia. He's Levon Makashvili's boy, and I think his wrestling's diminished too. That's the thing with these guys that are 37, 38 years old, when they're like Gray Maynard, for example, you know what I'm saying? When he's not fighting Teru, but like when their chin diminishes, their whole game diminishes. His wrestling's not the same. He got taken down by Augusto in a pivotal moment in the 3rd round to give Augusto that split decision win. And I feel like Merab can take him down and beat him in the wrestling as well. I know he's a D1 wrestler, but I feel like his whole game has diminished, and I put 3 units to win 2 on Merab Dvalishvili. I just need him to beat Frankie Saenz. I could care less what he does in the future, but I feel like he's gonna get a win here.
Yeah, it's an interesting fight, and I did successfully fade Frankie Saenz against Tanquino with that plus 180. Now, this is a different spot because Merab Dvalishvili, he's not the dog here. He's a minus 155 favorite in his UFC debut. And I'll tell you what, the kid's got a lot of potential, man. Obviously, that grappling's on point. He's got a Sambo background. Also has a boxing background. I mean, we saw him in the Golden Gloves finals. It was ugly as hell, but we still saw him in the Golden Gloves finals. It says a lot. The kid's 25 years old. He's training with Aljo every single day, so his grappling's on point. But unlike Aljo, if Merab gets put in a bad spot, he's not going to get punked out. He's not going to, start to question himself. He's going to stay poised. He's going to get back up, and he's going to get back to his game plan. So it's interesting because I feel like Frankie Saenz is obviously the more seasoned guy. He's the more experienced guy and also a D1 wrestler. But Merab, he's got that youth on his side. And honestly, I was thinking about betting Merab, but when I watched the tape, I passed, man, because I feel like Merab's a little bit green. Not too green to beat Frankie Saenz, but green to where it's gonna be a sweat at some points, man, because he still has a lot of developing to do in his game. But, man, his last fight, he came out there and he knocked out Rafion Stotts. And we were all, or at least I was saying, man, Rafion Stotts is about to get signed to the UFC. So the fact that Merab Dvalishvili went out there and knocked him out, that was a big statement in itself. And also, you've seen him go the 3-round distance many times on the regional scene. So I think this fight's going to be a 3-round grind. And I'm going to say Merab Dvalishvili by split decision. But don't be surprised if he knocks out Saenz along the way, because Saenz' chin has been giving out badly, man. And I know Eddie Wineland didn't do him any favors. I know Tanquinho didn't do him any favors. The reason that I'm not saying with an authority that Merab's going to knock him out is because I really think Merab is still green. I really think he's got a lot of developing to do. It should be enough to get the job done here, but I'm not convinced enough to bet it myself, so I'm going to pass, but I will pick Merab. Now, next up, in the flyweight division, we got Alex Perez. He's minus 400. The comeback on Carlos John de Thomas is plus 325. Now, I'm going to go ahead and break this one down first, man. Carlos John de Thomas, he's got one of the flyweight blitzes. If you've never experienced a flyweight blitz, it's a serious thing. But you know who's someone who has experienced that flyweight blitz? It's Alex Perez. I mean, the kid's 18-4. He's basically experienced everything you can experience outside the octagon. His debut in the UFC was really Dana White Tuesday Night Contender, but his debut inside the octagon, he looked like a vet out there, man. He looked like a seasoned guy. He was poised, and one little mistake from his opponent, he went out there, he snatched that neck, he choked him out. And I think the difference here is that Carlos John de Thomas is simply too green. The guys that he's been fighting on the regional scene have zero business in the UFC. We see with Carlos John de Thomas, yeah, he's got that nice flyweight blitz, but he'll do a bunch of shit where, like, he'll shoot for a takedown, and then off that takedown attempt, he'll get his back taken. And you make little mistakes like that against a guy like Alex Perez, who trains under Team Oyama, that neck is going to get snatched up again. So I'm going to go with Alex Perez. I mean, I think he's minus 400 for a reason, and I think he's going to win this fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much hit everything. Perez is solid experience. You know, he's not like one of these 4-0, 5-0 guys making their debut. The guy is 17-4, I think. De Thomas, you know, the line is accurate in my opinion. Perez's fight on Tuesday Night Contender Series, I mean, he fought a guy that beat Eryk Shelton in a 5-round fight. And, I mean, he took care of him from the opening bell. You could just see, in the lead-up to the finish, you could just see where that was going. And I think Perez will get the job done here as well.
Now, moving back up to the bantamweight division, we got Luke Sanders. He's minus 230. The comeback on Andre Soukhamthath is plus 190. What are you thinking, man?
This is the definition of a pass fight for me because both guys are what I like to consider flakes. You know, Luke Sanders, I was very high on this guy before he even made. You know, I actually predicted that he would beat Maximo Blanco up a weight class on 145 in his debut, and he went out there and handled him. And, you know, his next fight against Iuri, kicking the shit out of Iuri, and then Iuri rolls for a leg lock and he taps. And, you know, when you're betting, I mean, that just shows a sign that if anything goes wrong, I mean, I don't know what happened. I don't know what to say. I mean, but anything goes wrong and he taps like that, you know what I'm saying? You know, but Andre isn't going to roll for a leg lock. Andre's got some solid strikes. He's a long bantamweight. I mean, his fight against Albert Morales was good. I liked what I saw in that third round. And, you know, it was unfortunate what happened to him in the Alejandro Perez fight. He got weaseled. And Andre Soukhamthath, all of his losses are by decision. And when you bet, you have to go in there with the mindset that this fight is going to go 3 rounds. And he's only won one decision, and that decision was like in his second pro fight or something like that. I mean, so that just shows you that most likely he has to finish Luke Sanders to win this fight. And these are the definition of flakes. You don't want a guy that drops a guy and then points at him that he dropped him 3 times and just stands there, because, you know, the difference between him and Alejandro is that Alejandro got in his guard somewhat dropped him. Alejandro got in his guard and sealed off that round. And Soukhamthath doesn't have that fight IQ. You know, I think this fight is a lot closer. I feel like the fight should probably be a pick'em because I think Andre his striking skills are that good. But, you know, both guys are flakes. I want nothing to do with this fight. I can't trust either guy. Sanders, that tap was alarming in my opinion, even though I think he is the overall better fighter here. But you can't trust the guy at minus 230. Don't parlay Luke Sanders. Don't take the shot on Andre, because when he loses a split, you're going to be like, man, wow, he lost another decision. So I'm going to pass, but I'm going to take Luke Sanders by 29-28 split decision.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite side here, man. I feel like Luke Sanders, you know, he's got a very powerful left hand. We got to talk about that. Anyone he touches with that left hand, they feel it right away. He's also got a little wrestling in his game. But man, Andre Soukhamthath, I feel like he got the short end of the stick his last fight. I really do. I understand, the weaseling aspect, but man, I scored every round for Andre Soukhamthath in that fight. I feel so bad for him. And I think this is a different matchup, man. I feel like Luke is the kind of guy where even though he went 5 rounds with Terrion Ware, I feel like something starts to change after that first round. I don't know what the deal was in that Iuri Alcantara fight. He straight panic tapped, man. It was like back when Dubronx fought Jim Miller, and no disrespect to Iuri Alcantara's jiu-jitsu game, no disrespect to Jim Miller's jiu-jitsu game, because, those dudes crank my knee, I'm tapping right away too, you know what I'm saying? But I felt like at that level, someone like Frankie Edgar, even though he's in a different weight class, someone with that kind of toughness would have found a way to get out of it, or would have found a way to survive. And Andre Soukhamthath, this is a man with his back up against the wall. If he loses this fight, he's most likely getting cut from the UFC. It was this man's dream to not just fight in the UFC, but to win a fight. I feel like having your back up against the wall is a very dangerous position to be in, especially with a guy that's as experienced as Andre Soukhamthath, and I think he's going to finish Luke Sanders here in the second round with a flying knee. So I'm going to go with Andre Soukhamthath. I'm not betting this fight because, like you said, man, when he loses a split decision, I'm going to be like, wow, why did I bet it? So, I'd rather sit back, enjoy it, and I'm going to go with Andre Soukhamthath. Now, next up, in, I believe, the middleweight division, we got Trevin Giles. He's minus 250. The comeback on Antonio Braga Neto is plus 210. Now, we haven't seen Antonio Braga Neto in a while, but just to refresh everyone's memory, he submitted Anthony Smith in the very first round with a knee bar. And not only that, he touched him up on the feet, too. He destroyed Anthony Smith in the first round. If you guys know who Anthony Smith is, it's that dude that knocked out Hector Lombard his last fight. You know what I'm saying? So, the dude that knocked out Andrew Sanchez. Antonio Braga Neto handled that dude, but since then, since the Clint Hester fight, he's been gone a long while. And Trevin Giles looks like an athletic freak. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, it's an interesting fight because Braga Neto, I felt like he got straight robbed against Clint Hester. Clint Hester is from Atlanta, but man, I was alive. I was happy that he won, but I mean, if we're being honest, he lost that fight. It was just because Braga Neto was doing the typical Brazilian weasel shit, and he actually couldn't finalize the weasel. And Trevin Giles, very athletic. I mean, what he did in his debut against, I don't even know what his name was. What was his name? But I mean, he butchered that boy from the opening bell.
Bachnovic.
Yeah, something like that, some jobber. But Trevin Giles is serious, man. But this fight actually has the potential to be a lot closer than the line indicates, because let's say Trevin Giles comes out here and empties his load in round 1. And then round 2 and 3, you don't want a guy like Braga Neto on top of you, man. I mean, the guy's got way better jiu-jitsu than Trevin Giles. And I mean, I know he's coming off almost a 4-year layoff, but if Trevin Giles empties out that gas tank, it's going to get real hairy. So I'm going to take Trevin Giles just because Braga Neto's been out for 4 years. But I mean, lately, a lot of guys have been winning coming off 2-3-year layoffs, man. And I wouldn't be shocked if Braga Neto, shocked the world here, but I'm going to go with Trevin Giles. I'm actually going to say he has to go the 3-round distance to get this one.
I'm going to pick Trevin Giles as well, but I'm going to pick him with a little bit more confidence. I do think that the layoff is going to be a big factor here, especially when, look, I respect Antonio Braga Neto's BJJ a lot. I mean, you saw how he submitted Anthony Smith, but... And no disrespect to our ATL boy, Clint Hester, but, when you're rolling on the mat with that guy for 3 rounds, you can't tap him out at that level. I think that speaks volumes, Shaq. And now with the new drug testing, with the 4-year layoff, and the fact that Trevin Giles has been active inside the octagon, he just absolutely smashed his first opponent. I know that dude, we can say whatever we want about him, but the bottom line is Trevin Giles performed under those lights. I think he's going to perform again. I think he's going to overwhelm Antonio Braga Neto. Not sure if it's going to be a lopsided decision or a finish, but bottom line, I'm taking the favorite here, Trevin Giles. Now, next up in the women's bantamweight division.
Flyweight.
Oh, this strawweight?
Flyweight.
Flyweight. We got, so 125-pound bout. We got Liz Carmouche. She's minus 175. The comeback on Alexis Davis is plus 155. Now, has Alexis Davis won a fight since she had the kid?
Yeah, she did want to fight. This is an interesting fight because they're both making that cut to 125, and I actually saw a little video of Alexis Davis. She lost a lot of weight. She's doing this cut down to 125 correctly, but Liz Carmouche, before, she just had a 2-year layoff before the Caitlin Chukagian fight, and I mean, she came back a different fighter. I mean, it was actually pretty mind-blowing in the sense that, in the past, she would engage in that typical female bullshit, the head and arm throw, the typical female shit. And now against Chookagian, who in my opinion has a bright future in the women's game, Chookagian's a chick that can actually, point fight, parry, throw volume, throw multiple combinations, as where most of these chicks are still stuck in that Stone Age sense of fighting. And I mean, Liz Carmouche was not playing those old games that she used to play, man. She came in there bouncing around on the outside, and it's funny, they have fought before, and in that first fight, Liz Carmouche used to be a southpaw. So, Alexis Davis was blasting her with that inside leg kick, and then she comes back after a 2-year layoff, and now she's fighting orthodox. So it's kind of interesting how she reinvented herself. I see her, she's competing in EBI tournaments and, things like that. Her gym now is a 10th Planet gym. And, Alexis Davis, she's a pioneer of the game. She's been around a long time. But, I mean, I think she slowed down, and I feel like she made a good point her last fight. She said, with a baby now, it's kind of hard training. It's hard to, be the fighter that she once was. And even the fighter that she once was a chick that used to get tagged with pretty much every punch that her opponent throws. And I mean, you know how the females is, they can't get knocked out, so she can just keep eating the shots. And she would either, get arm bars like how she did against Sarah Kaufman, or, she beat a Jessica Ai who's like 1-15 in the UFC. And, she had that title shot against Ronda Rousey, and she got knocked out. And it's fun in 16 seconds. And, it's funny because Liz Carmouche, I've seen her actually pick up a few chicks and slam them on their heads in the UFC. And, I mean, she's a physical specimen now. I don't know what she was doing on that 2-year layoff, but I mean, she came back and got her levels right. I mean, when she was walking into the octagon, Joe Rogan made a point. He was like, I mean, Jesus Christ, look at Liz, bro. Like, she looks like a physical specimen. And I mean, I saw pictures of her in this camp again, and she's looking the same. Took another year off, and I'm expecting, an even better version of her in that coming into this fight. The line opened up -140. I actually highly considered playing Liz, but, when I got my Davi Ramos line, I was all in on Davi. So Liz Carmouche was actually my second option. But I think Liz Carmouche is going to get the job done here. I don't think she's going to engage Alexis Davis in that typical female fighting bullshit, none of the head and arm throws. She's completely took all that shit out of her game. And I mean, she's parrying strikes from Chookagian and countering, and the takedowns were nice, and no head and arm throws. I mean, it was impressive in my opinion. So look out for Liz Carmouche at 125. 125 is very weak, if we're being honest. I mean, shout out to Nico Montano, but let's be honest here. her run is coming to an end very, very soon.
Real quick, because I'm sure people would rather hear about this than this actual fight. I heard some people talking about, you can't give Nico Montano Valentina Shevchenko. Why the fuck not?
Because
First of all,
that fight can't be sanctioned, bro.
Yes, it can. When you're a UFC champ, there's no baby steps. This isn't some prospect that we're developing, even though it kind of is. But the bottom line is, you're holding that UFC belt. There's no, let's give her Roxanne Modafferi, even though that's what just happened. Like, there's no, let's give her Lauren Murphy. No. You're going to fight Valentina Shevchenko because you're holding that UFC gold. You should fight the number one contender. The number one contender is Valentina. I don't care if it's a fucking crime scene. Let's see that shit, man. I mean, when you're the champ, you fight the best. That's the bottom line.
Like I was saying, though, but poor Nico, because she is absolutely fucked. I mean, I feel like if Liz Carmouche in her fight, I feel like Liz Carmouche would, slam her on her head. But I'm going to go with Liz Carmouche in this one. I feel like, she's evolved her game. Unlike Alexis Davis, I feel like she's made the proper changes into her game. And like I said, if you watch her fight with Lauren Murphy and her fight with Kaylin Chookagian, it's a completely different chick. So I'm going to take Liz Carmouche by 30-26.
Yeah, I'm going to take Carmouche as well. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go down, but I feel like with Alexis Davis, you saw how her body looked, after the baby. And, I'm not here body shaming or any bullshit like that. But look, man, we're breaking down these fights. When a fighter's looking a little softer, I'm going to straight up say it. Just like I say it for all the dudes, why can't I say it when a chick's looking a little soft? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, she just had a baby. Well, my girl Laura Sanko had a baby recently too. She ain't looking soft, I'll tell you that right now. So, it's one of these situations where Alexis Davis, let's be honest, she lost to Cindy Dandois. Officially it's a win. We know the decision was kind of shaky that night in Nashville, but Cindy Dandois beat Alexis Davis. That's all I got to say about that. this fight going at 125 is going to be interesting because Alexis Davis actually has to lose some weight. So we'll see if, you know what I'm saying? We'll be seeing if she's walking around with those love handles anymore. And Liz Carmouche is a lot better, but Liz Carmouche does a bunch of dumb shit in her fights. You know what I mean? It looked like she beat Miesha Tate, and then she lost to Miesha Tate. She takes Ronda Rousey's back, and then gets reversed, gets armbar. So she's the kind of fighter where she'll start off good, she'll get into good spots, and then she'll do something to fuck it up along the way. Like even in the Chukagian fight, which she clearly won 2 or 3 rounds, and she's cruising the first 2 rounds. That third round, she goes out there and gets dropped. So I don't trust Liz Carmouche at all, but I trust Alexis Davis even less. And obviously, I'm not betting this fight. I'll pick Liz Carmouche by decision, but you know what I'm saying. Don't be surprised if Liz is winning the whole fight and then she gets armbarred. Now, next up in the men's bantamweight division, we got Albert the Warrior Moraes. He's -110, and Benito Lopez is also -110. What do you think, man?
It's a very good fight. Benito, his fight on Tuesday Night Contender Series, I actually watched it recently. And, first round, super flashy, flying knees. He's a long bantamweight. The guy's like 5'10", 5'11", if I'm not mistaken. Very long bantamweight, training at Team Alpha Male. Albert Moraes, training at Black House. Albert Moraes, he's had the short end of the stick, man. The guy comes in, fights Alejandro's debut, then Thomas Almeida, and then, they put him in there with Soukhamthath, another tough fight, and then he has to fight Brett Johns, who, is 1 or 2 top prospects at 135 right now, and he's had the short end of the stick, and I don't think he's getting, any easier fights with Benito, because, a lot of people say, oh, Benito lost that fight. He didn't lose that fight. I rewatched it. He won 2 rounds to 1. It was a tough fight. I thought his opponent was actually a perfect test for that level of that stage in his career, because Steven Peterson is a former legacy champion, and Benito handled him well, man. The cardio was a little in question, but when you're throwing flying knees and spinning head kicks, that's what happens. You gas out. And Albert Moraes, I feel like he's a tough guy, but I feel like his stand-up isn't improving, I feel like his jiu-jitsu is really good. I feel like, he's a tough guy. I feel like he's willing to eat shots, and I feel like he's game as fuck. But I feel like just standing inside the pocket, I feel like he's still a little choppy. I really don't see that much improvement in him. I wouldn't be shocked if he took this one, but I'm going to go with Benito. I think he's going to have to go 3 rounds, because I know Albert ain't no quitter. I know Albert's going to be here for the duration of the 3 rounds. I feel like it's going to be a similar fight to the Peterson fight. I feel like Benito actually does have potential to have a good career at 135. That doesn't say, the guy's never lost a fight. He's undefeated as an amateur. He's undefeated as a pro. So that first L is coming up very soon, and this is the perfect spot. Albert Moraes' back is against the wall. If he loses this one, I don't think he'll get cut, but his record won't look so hot. So, I'm going to go with Benito. I think he's just going to take advantage of the openings inside the pocket. Like I said, I feel like Albert's really choppy inside exchanging punches. But I wouldn't be shocked if Albert pulled it off.
Yeah, it's interesting because I felt like Benito's last fight, even though he won, I felt like it showed the blueprint on how to beat this kid. And, look, that first round, he's a dynamo, man. He's coming out there with the flying knees, the spins. He's super dynamic. He's huge for the weight class. You shoot in on a sloppy takedown on Benito Lopez. He's going to snatch that neck as well. Kind of reminded me of like when Showtime Perez was first coming up in the WEC, and he's tapping those dudes out. He's getting them with flying knees. He's doing all these things. But after that first round, man, Benito was not the same dude, and he was in there with, no offense to Peterson, but let's just say Peterson wouldn't really swim with the Sharks at 135 in the UFC, and I fully believe that. And I was very surprised. I felt like Benito was very lucky to win the contract, let alone win that fight. And let's just put it like that. And with Albert, man, his back is seriously up against the wall. But this is the first time in his UFC career that he gets a full training camp. Let's talk about his UFC career real quick. He gets the call to fight Alejandro Perez on the border of Mexico on 2 weeks short notice. In my opinion, he won that fight, but, Alejandro weaseled, which he is known for. Then Albert gets a 2-week short notice call to co-headline in Brazil against Tomas Almeida. Okay, then he fights Andre Soukhamthath on a week short notice on the year-end card in Vegas. Then he gets another short notice call. He's got to go all the way to Scotland to fight Brett Johns, who's undefeated, who's probably the number 1 prospect at 135 pounds. Talk about a murderer's row. Talk about not getting a break. Now he's got a full training camp under him, and look, we're not fighting Alejandro on the border of Mexico. We're not fighting Tomas Almeida in Brazil. We're not fighting Brett Johns in Scotland. Now we get a full training camp. We're in our backyard in California, and I know Benito's from Cali as well, but look, I think what's going to happen here is that Benito is going to come out here, win the first round. Then after that, he's going to slow down. I think that Albert's going to take advantage and grind out those last 2 rounds, get a much-needed UFC win, and get back on track, man. There's a reason they gave Albert a new contract after that last L, because they like people that'll step up on short notice, fight anyone, anytime, any place, and Albert comes to fight more importantly. And I know his last fight, he got grinded out, but that wasn't a case where Albert doesn't know how to stuff a takedown, or Albert doesn't know how to push the head down or wall walk or anything like that. It was simply a case where Brett Johns is that damn good. Brett Johns is that damn physical. I mean, you saw what Brett Johns just did at Joe Soto. One does not simply tap out Joe Soto in 30 seconds, let alone with a calf slicer. I just think, the dudes he's been fighting are on a completely different level, and now he finally gets someone that's on his level, and I think he's going to shine here, man. So I'm going to go with Albert Morales by unanimous decision. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got Eryk Anders. He's minus 280. The comeback on Marcus Perez is plus 240. Now, we watched the tape on Marcus. He was looking a little bit small for 85, man. It's going to be interesting to see how he deals with the athleticism and the sheer force of nature that is Eryk Anders.
Eryk Anders, D1 football player, and not just a D1 football player. We're talking about University of Alabama, you know what I'm saying? The cream of the crop Division I football player. And Marcus Perez got some nice jiu-jitsu his last fight against Ian Heinisch, who, if Ian Heinisch would have won that fight, he would have probably been in the UFC. He was actually the guy that was supposed to win that fight, and Marcus Perez took care of him. Look, Eryk Anders is scary, man. I mean, that fight with Rafael Natal, I felt bad for Rafael Natal to be locked in a cage with a fucking, Division I middle linebacker.
That can fight.
That can fight. Poor Rafael, man. That guy, he retired for a reason, just put it that way. And, Marcus Perez, I feel like the line's about accurate. I've seen Eryk Anders go 5 rounds, in his fight with Brendan Allen, who was also on the verge of getting signed by the UFC.
And will get signed very soon.
Exactly. And Eryk Anders, won the first 3 rounds, this fight is 3 rounds. If this was a 5-round fight, then it might get hairy, because in that fight with Brendan Allen, he completely gassed out in the last 2. I'm going to go with Anders in this one. Like I said, I feel like Perez is a welterweight fighting Anders, but, if Anders blows himself out in the first round, like we said about Trevin Giles, he better be very fucking careful playing with this guy Marcus Perez. But I feel like his size will bail him out of a lot of situations if it gets hairy. But I think Eryk Anders will get a 2nd round TKO.
Man, it's interesting because Marcus Perez, when you talk about do these prospects have enough experience on the regional scene when they come into the UFC, the answer is yes for Marcus Perez, because, look, he went in there with Paulo Thiago, the UFC vet, the guy that knocked out Josh Koscheck. Marcus Perez beat him. He beat Ildemar Alcantara, who's also a UFC vet. Now, on one hand, you look at it and you say, well, shit, he went to a split decision with Paulo Thiago. We know for a fact Eryk Anders would smoke Paulo Thiago and won. Well, we had Eryk Anders on the show. I asked him about that. I'm like, bro, do you at all feel like the fact that, he went to a split with Paulo Thiago, are you at all like, man, I would have put this dude out in the first? And Eryk Anders gave him the benefit of the doubt. Eryk Anders was like, hey, man, it looked like the mat was really slippery in that fight, and if it was anywhere else with a more solid canvas, he might have actually put him out. I was like, wow, that's a very humble thing of Eryk Anders to say, you know what I mean? And here in the UFC's octagon, it's going to be interesting because Marcus Perez, he actually is an athletic guy, but like Eryk Anders said in our interview, Marcus Perez throws big loopy shots, and Eryk Anders throws straight down the middle. We know straight down the middle lands before a big loop, and a straight line lands before a circle, bottom line. And I think when he does one of his athletic blitzes, man, Marcus Perez is going to be like, oh, shit, so this ain't Paulo Thiago or Ildemar Alcantara anymore. This is unlike anything I've ever faced before. And Marcus Perez will be back. He's going to have a bright future. But right here, right now, at UFC Fresno, I think Eryk Anders is about to stop him, man. And, of course, I'm taking your boy, minus 280, Eryk Anders, no bet, because, I already got enough money invested on Davi Ramos. But Eryk Anders is about to take care of biz here, and I'm very excited for him to go 2-0 in the UFC. And next up in the lightweight division, we got Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman. Scotty, he's minus 120, and the comeback on Daryl Horcher is plus 100. What's Horcher's nickname?
Does he even have a nickname?
Is it the Night Horcher?
I have no idea. But Horcher, man, I thought he was a jobber, but then I rewatched him, man. The motherfucker's got a nice-ass left hand, I saw highlights of him before the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight because it's funny. It's funny. Zaleski dos Santos fought Omari that night, and back in my jobber days, like I see a lot of you motherfuckers doing parlaying underdogs. I put Zaleski at plus 125 in a parlay with one open spot, and I finished it with Khabib Nurmagomedov. It was like minus 1,000, and but yeah, I saw some highlights of Horcher. I mean, he knocked out EJ Brooks. His only losses I think were to Felipe Nover and.
Khabib.
No, they had another loss on the local scene. I can't remember who it was. It's somebody in the UFC though. I can't think. And I saw him knock out Frankie Edgar's boy Chris Ligori in devastating fashion. And the guy's got a nice left hand. And the reason I bring that up is because Holtzman, like I said about Grutzemacher, he's one of those typical MMA lab guys that like to rely on their ability to eat shots and keep moving forward in hopes that their opponent breaks. And Holtzman, I think he's tough as fuck. I mean, I watched his Dober fight. I mean, him and Dober had a bloody war. I mean, they were both bloodied up. And, they were both, in the wizard position, fighting for takedowns, going tooth and nail. And, his fight with Josh Emmett, who, is a tank of a man at 155 and 145. Holtzman held his own because he's so tough. He's a former pro hockey player. Dan doesn't think he's a former pro hockey player, but
he's not.
He's a former pro hockey player.
Remind me when he played in the NHL, please.
He's a former pro hockey player. He's a minor league pro hockey player, but still, he was a pro. He got drafted, just put it that way. And Holtzman,
he wasn't pro shit.
He got drafted. So Holtzman, he's a solid guy. But the reason I bring that up is I feel like he walks in with his face first. In all of his fights, he keeps doing it. He just walks in with his face first and he eats a shot, but he just keeps walking through. But eventually, he's going to pay the price for that. And I feel like Horcher might be the guy that exposes that. And Horcher, he's coming off that motorcycle accident, the Khabib fight where he said just everything in the lead up to it was just terrible. And, that motorcycle accident. And to be honest, if we're being honest, he won every round against Devin Powell. The reason why it was a split is because Horcher just kept fucking around. I don't know why, but he kept doing stupid shit like purposely leaving his neck in on Darce chokes and guillotines and shit like that. And but he won every round of that fight. I actually like his style because he just like chills out. He kind of reminds me of like a southpaw Rustam where he just chills out. But when he goes, he throws like multiple left hands in a row, and that left hand's money. So I'm actually gonna take Horcher in this one. I actually think he's gonna land the more effective shots in this one. I think he's gonna win 2 rounds. I actually considered Holtzman initially, but when I watched that Horcher fight with Devin Powell, I was like, that left hand is money, man. And I think he's going to wobble Holtzman at some point and win a split decision or 29-28.
Yeah, no, that left hand is money. And, Daryl Horcher kind of reminds me of an old school Gray Maynard. He'll do absolutely nothing for the first 4 minutes of the round. But then when it's time to seal off that last minute and win the round, he knows exactly how to do that. He'll take you down. He'll lay on you, do absolutely nothing. But when that left hand lands, you're going to feel it. So we basically got the 2017 version of old school Gray Maynard. That's what Daryl Horcher is. And with Scott Holtzman, man, he's a physical dude out there. He's a bruiser, man. He comes to brawl, and his fights get interesting because, first of all, he loses decisions to Drew Dober, which, Drew Dober's come a long way. It's not bad.
Don't shit on my boy Dober like that.
It's not like back when we used to, joke around about losing to Dober. Now Dober's come a long way.
Dober's a solid guy.
So just don't be surprised if this fight goes to a split either way. I'm going to go with Scotty here just because I feel like now he's got that momentum. Now he's going to start to kind of come into his own, whereas Horcher, I felt like his swan song, his hurrah, was that Devin Powell fight because for him, he had the motorcycle accident. He had all these things, and, his dream was just to get his arm raised one time inside the octagon. It happened. He got his arm raised one time inside the octagon. Congrats. But now I think that Scott Holtzman, he's got the momentum. I think he's going to come in here and win a split. But one thing I want to say, I want to give a shout-out to my boy Daryl Horcher because in that Khabib fight, I bet the under 1.5. And if you know about Khabib's history, you know that 1.5s do not cash in Khabib Nurmagomedov fights. But against Daryl Horcher, the under 1.5 did cash. So much, thank you, Daryl Horcher, for that. You know what I'm saying? But in this spot, man, I'm going to go with Scott Holtzman by split decision. I think that he'll land slightly more volume. And then when, Daryl tries to steal the round at the 4-minute mark with a takedown, I actually think Scott's going to be able to stop it, man. So I'm going to go with Scott by split. Now, this one I'm very much looking forward to, man. Bantamweight division. There's a lot of bantamweight fights on this card. Magic Marlon Moraes. He's minus 150. And Aljamain Sterling is plus 130.
Aljamain Sterling? What can I say about the guy? You know, when he was back in his days when he was a top 5 guy and he was a future world champion. You know, I have quotation marks up on my hands right now as I'm recording this. And, you know, me and my boy Dan, you know, we successfully faded him against my boy Brian Caraway. Shout out to my boy Brian Caraway, by the way. He's honestly a better weasel than Alejandro Perez. I mean, Brian Caraway is the weasel, you know what I'm saying? And my boy Brian Caraway straight up broke him, like Cody Garbrandt said. You got broken by the biggest pussy in the division, and he got broken. And, you know, we hit that plus 350. And the points handicap. And Aljo, I mean, what can I say? You know, then he got splitted by my fellow ATL boy, Rafael Assunção, which, you know, no shame in that. Rafael did the same thing to Moraes. And, you know, his next fight against Augusto, he got dropped by a jiu-jitsu guy. You know, and then, you know, his fight with Henan. Come on, guys. We know Henan's done. Let's not mince words. Don't forget that Henan was a former champ. Henan has nothing left in the tank. And, you know, he had a good first round. And Aljo got to feast on the carcass of, you know, what TJ did. And it is what it is. And, you know, look, okay, I'm talking shit now, but I'll be honest. Aljo, he's got good grappling. He is improving. You know, Aljo reminds me a lot of another guy that, you know, he reminds me of Elias in a sense where, like, on the feet he just kicks. The kicks really don't have shit on them, but he just throws a fucking massive volume amount of kicks, and, you know, he finds a way to win fights, except when he fights guys that, you know, will push him. And, you know, Marlon Moraes, in my opinion, is going to push him, you know. Marlon Moraes, I feel like Marlon Moraes is more, you know, prone to losing the guys that will drop him, hurt him, like Rafael Assunção, or, you know, his last fight against Swanson. I feel like that's honestly a worse matchup for him. You know, the reason why I'm not on Marlon in this spot is because, like I said, Aljo reminds me of Elias. These guys, they're hard to fight because they don't really fight. You know what I'm saying? These guys like to run away. They just like to kick and run off, and it's hard to fight a guy like that, even though it's not exciting, even though it's super hard to fight a guy like that, even though, like, for example, my boy Brad Tavares is 100 times better than Elias, but that fight ended up being a close decision because Elias just fucking kicks, and I feel like that's a similar story. I actually think this fight is going to be really close. I think Marlon Moraes is going to edge it out. Just, I feel like he's going to, you know, make the crowd go ooh when he lands an overhand right or a combo like that. But this fight is really close because Aljo is a super tough guy to fight. And, you know, on the grappling, I don't think he can take Moraes. I think he might take him down maybe once or twice early, but can he do it consistently for 3 rounds? I don't think so, because Marlon Moraes is a guy that trains with Frankie Edgar every day. He trains with Eddie Alvarez every day. And he's also used to getting kicked by Edson Barbosa. Him and Edson Barbosa go way back in Brazil. So, I mean, he's been dealing with kickers a long time. You know, I'm going to pass and enjoy this fight. My pick is Moraes, but I wouldn't be shocked if Sterling, you know, weasel to split out, just because I said his type of style is super hard to fight, man. Like I said, Assunção is way better than this guy, but it went to a split, you know? And it is what it is, but I'm going to go with Marlon Moraes, but I'm passing, man. I'm just going to enjoy this one. I feel like it could go either way.
I'm going to pick Marlon Moraes as well, but with a little bit more confidence. And I agree, you know, Aljo is a tough guy to fight, just like Elias, but I also feel like, you know, when these guys step up, they get figured out every time. And, you know, when we talk about Elias' kicking game, listen, it needs to be understood that we're not, you know, comparing it to Jose Aldo or Edson Barbosa or people with real kicking games. You know what
like
I'm saying?
Like I said, the kicks don't have shit on them, but they just keep throwing, kicking. You know what I'm saying?
It's just a way to avoid a fight. And then on the mat, Aljo's a monster on the mat, but he might take down Marlon one time. I think Marlon will get back up. I think Marlon's going to butcher him with that right kick, man. Also, Marlon really impressed me his last fight. I think the only reason it was a split is because he got dropped in that first round. And, you know, when you get dropped, you know, people have a certain impression of how the fight's going. But, look, he got dropped in that first round, then he controlled the next 14 minutes. So, you know, I thought it was a pretty clear decision for Marlon in that fight. And when you start making a guy like Dodson look slow on the feet, when you start teeing off on a guy like Dodson, That told me a lot, because I thought there was going to be a huge speed difference in that fight, and there wasn't, man. Marlon, he made his style work. and he slowed down Dodson, and he messed with him too. And also, Marlon's not scared to get dirty in there too, man. He's not scared to throw 2 low blows, eye poke you one time, get that ref's warning, and then not do it again. But it'll compromise the opponent. And yeah, you might call it dirty, you might call it whatever. But when we're betting on these fights, when we're picking winners, you need a stable of guys that know how to cheat to win, like my boy John Bones Jones. He always utilizes that eye poke and.
Like my boy Caraway. It's funny, in that third round, Aljamain was about to actually get a reversal, and Caraway grabbed the fence to hold on, and he stayed on top. So you got to have good cheaters and weasels on your team.
Yeah, and I don't think, the little cheating is going to be the story of this fight. I think that the hard right kick, I think the technical prowess of Marlon Moraes is going to be the story. I think he's going to outwork Aljamain and just outstrike him out and just beat him everywhere. But if we need to, use some dirty tactics along the way, I think we will. I think we're experienced enough to do so. And the people that I worry most about when Marlon fights are hard, heavy hitters. I was worried against John Dodson because we've seen in the past, even in Marlon's, Shudo fights in that gym in Brazil, his chin ain't the best. His heart's the best, but his chin ain't the best. But with a dude like Aljo who, has absolutely zero power, I ain't worried about it whatsoever, man. And I'm not worried about him getting, double full Nelson. I'm not worried about any of that shit happening. So I'm going to go with Marlon. But let's talk about, Aljo versus Barao. Because I know it's a big deal in a lot of people's eyes that Aljamain Sterling beat Renan Barao. And the way I view it is, so you saw that first round. Renan Barao completely outclassed him, but Renan had nothing left after the first round. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the new USADA testing. Maybe it's the 2 TJ beatings. But bottom line, Barao hasn't had that same cardio that he used to have. I mean, you remember the original Faber fight, the 5-round one. I mean, he 50-45'd him, man. He was good to go all 5 rounds, and now he's gassing out after that first, and that's something that Marlon's not going to do. If Marlon gasses out after that first, then hey, much respect, Aljo. Go ahead and take this one, but I highly doubt that's what's going to happen here, man. And also, much lesser competition has been showing signs that they're able to do successful things against Aljo. They just haven't been able to seal the deal. Like what I'm talking about is Tanquinho Mendes dropped Aljamain Sterling. Now, if Marlon drops Aljamain Sterling, he's going to follow up. He's going to finish the fight. When Tanquinho Mendes dropped Aljamain Sterling, he immediately jumped for a guillotine. That was a sign of bad fight IQ, man. And then, he gave up position. He was on his back for the rest of the round. Judges forgot about that knockdown, and Aljo won, man. So those are little things that Marlon's not going to do. He's not going to gas out after the first round like Barao, and he's not going to go for a guillotine when he drops Aljo like Tanquinho did. So little things like that. And then we saw the blueprint against Caraway. We got to get past that first round and break this guy. I think Marlon's got the perfect skill set to do that. So I'm going to go with Marlon by 30-27 unanimous decision. Co-main event of the evening. Featherweight division, we got Jason the Kid Knight. He's minus 310. He's taking on Gabriel Mowgli Benitez, who's plus 255. What are you thinking, Shaq?
I think the line's a joke, to be honest. I know Jason Knight was on a quite the run before the Ricardo Lamas fight, and before that fight, I had everyone was forgetting. Everyone was in this Jason Knight love fest, like he was this invincible guy that can't be knocked out, that's just gonna get through anything, and that's not the case with anyone. Everyone's can get knocked out, like we just saw this past weekend with Justin Gaethje, which we predicted on Half the Battle, and everyone has to take that L, man. And Jason Knight had to take his. It's a good lesson. Ricardo Lamas, no shame in that. Top 5 guy, been a top 5 guy for God knows how long. And Gabriel Benitez plus 255. I feel like this is a good style matchup for him because Gabriel's last fight with Barzola, I'm actually going to go in here and on the record to say that I think Enrique Barzola is a way better overall fighter than Jason Knight. And I know Jason Knight's tough. I know Jason Knight will never quit. I know he's a tenacious hillbilly animal that will not quit. But the thing is, in that Caceres fight, every time Caceres landed a left kick to the leg, his leg would give out. Every time he landed a straight left, Knight wouldn't have an answer for it. But, Caceres doesn't win UFC fights. That's why Caceres has lost half of his fights. And, the thing is with Gabriel, it's a matter of can you trust the guy? The line is off, I'll tell you that. But can you trust the guy? Because he failed to make the adjustments in the Barzola fight because, granted, I think Barzola's a lot better, but Barzola just kept getting takedown after takedown after takedown, and I mean, man, you gotta make an adjustment. You gotta get your underhooks. He just couldn't make that adjustment. So I feel like Jason Knight doesn't really have those double legs against the fence. I feel like he has body locks. But I mean, if this fight becomes a war, it's a 50-50 fight at that point. But I feel like on the feet, it's a good matchup for Gabriel. I feel like the left kick to the body is going to play a major weapon. I feel like if he mixes it up low and high, I feel like he can make Knight look real silly out there. But the thing is, Jason Knight ain't going to fucking quit. I'll tell you that much right now. The guy's got mad heart. And it's going to be a war. A Mexican guy versus a guy from Mississippi that grew up in the sticks riding four-wheelers and probably, fighting in trailer parks and things like that. So, I'm going to have to pass on Gabriel. But I'm going to pick Gabriel. But, I'll probably kick myself for not betting it because I feel like it's a really good matchup for him on the feet if he shows up. I know he's training with Alejandro, a.k.a. But I feel like, man, if this fight becomes a bloody back-and-forth war, that's the type of shit Knight likes. But if Gabriel can stick to a game plan, if he can circle off, land that left kick, I feel like he's going to butcher him with that left kick, man, If he can just do it for 2 rounds and just hold on in the third one, because, Jason Knight's jiu-jitsu is absolutely disgusting. One fuck up with that guy on the mat, one back take, he'll choke you out. So I'm going to have to pass, but the pick is Gabriel.
I think from a betting perspective, it's dog or pass. But from a picks perspective, it's interesting. I'm actually going to go with Jason the Kid Knight. I'll tell you why, man. I feel like you're right about, the first couple opening exchanges, man. Gabriel's going to land that left kick. He's going to blast Jason Knight. Jason Knight his legs might even give out. He might get dropped. But eventually, I think Jason Knight's going to find his way to the back of Gabriel, and he's going to be able to win rounds that way. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to choke him out. Maybe not, but I think Jason Knight's going to win the decision here in a fight of the night type war where both men wobble, both men get dropped. But I think the difference here is going to be that Jason Knight's going to be able to get those takedowns, man, or get those back takes. The thing is, man, when you see this minus 310, you see this plus 255 as a gambling, man, you got to take risks sometimes, man. You got to, play these underdogs because that's what wins long term. Now, if I wasn't betting Davi Ramos already, if I didn't have a max bet on the line, I'd maybe consider taking a 1 or 2 unit shot on Gabriel, even though I think Jason Knight's probably going to win this just because plus 255 is kind of a joke. But I understand why Jason's favored, man, because Gabriel, even though, like you said, man, that left kick, Javier Mendez said it himself, man. The dude kicks harder than Luke Rockhold, And Jason Knight is going to feel that left kick. Believe you me, he will feel that left kick of Gabriel Benitez. But I'm not convinced Gabriel, stops the back take. I'm not convinced he stops the double leg. Not that this is some D1 double leg or anything like that. Far from it, but we've seen in the past it doesn't take much to take Gabriel down. Goddamn Humberto Brown took the guy down. You know what I'm fucking saying, man? So I think Jason Knight will be able to take him down, even though Gabriel is training with guys like Cain Velasquez, even though Cain's injured and he's probably not training with him. But he's training with Khabib. He's training with some great wrestlers every single day. But when it comes time to executing it inside the UFC's octagon, Jason Knight's found a way to get these guys down on the mat, man. Except Lamas, and that was very alarming. And you actually point out that pre-fight interview to me where he's, when some people get 50K bonuses and they've never had money before in their lives, they go off the deep end a little bit, man. You know what I'm saying? He's getting into 4-wheeler accidents.
Weeks before the fight.
That all his friends that he never even, his third cousin he never even knew existed came into his life all of a sudden and is asking him for money. You know what I'm saying? All that kind of shit happens when you get those kind of bonuses. But I would have to assume, and I could be wrong, I would have to assume that once you get your ass kicked the way he did against Lamas, you have to say, all right, I need to get my shit together. Knowing the kind of competitor Jason Knight is. That's probably what he said. If he didn't learn his lesson and he's still out there partying all the time, then Gabriel might make it look easy. It might be a head kick knockout. But if Jason said, all right, man, I got to get my shit together, then I think he's going to be able to take that back of Gabriel and grind out this fight after some very scary moments where he gets kicked hard. I'm going to go with Jason by 29-28 decision, but dog or pass from a betting perspective. Main event of the evening. Brian T-City Ortega, he's a minus 120, and Cub Swanson is plus 100. Now, man, I really wanted to play Brian T-City Ortega at dog money, but it looks like the public came in on Brian Ortega, even though I see every single person on Twitter on Cub Swanson, which is kind of interesting. It shows that these dudes are betting $1 units.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought Ortega was going to get better because on Twitter it seemed like everyone was putting max bets on Cub Swanson.
50-cent bets on Cub Swanson.
So it's interesting. Cub Swanson, This might be his last fight with the company, man. He might be fighting Manny Sanchez in a few months, and you know who I got in that fight. And Ortega, I faded him. I tried to fade him against Renato Moicano, and man, let me tell you about that fight. So going into the fight, I mean, look at the tape on Ortega. I mean, the fight with Diego Brandao, he literally stares at Diego Brandao for 2 rounds and just doesn't throw. He does the same thing against Guida. First round, literally just stares at Guida, gets dropped, and doesn't throw. He did it in the second round as well. The guy just wasn't throwing. So I'm thinking, going into that fight, that he's going to do the same shit because he keeps getting away with it. And a different motherfucker came out in that fight because he fucking took it to Hanato in that first round. And, I felt like Hanato answered back well, but I ain't never seen Ortega just bite down right away from the opening bell and just come at a motherfucker like that. And I was shocked, man. And he drowned my boy Hanato. He broke Hanato's nose. His hands got a lot better. His boxing that was a drastic improvement in his hands. I mean, watching that fight live, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I wasn't expecting this guy. And, that just shows the type of improvement he's been putting in. I know he's been putting in work at Black House with Albert and Luke Sanders. And it's that training's paying off. And, Cub Swanson, like I said, one of the best to ever do it, man. Cub Swanson's been a top 5 guy for God knows how long, man. I mean, the guy has been doing this shit for a long time. And, I mean, he likes to accomplish what he calls a beautiful destruction. And I feel like he's getting a little sloppier, though, man. I mean, if we're being honest, his 4-fight win streak, let's not put too much stock into that because, he beat Hakan Diaz, who you've heard me on Half the Battle tell you that you should always fade. You always fade Hakan Diaz. And, he beat Tatsuya Kawajiri in an ugly fight. I mean, Tatsuya won the first round. And, Tatsuya's a 37-year-old old man. And by that fight, and then, the Duho fight was impressive because Duho has got some very good hands. But, Duho stands right in front of you and he likes to exchange. And it was time for Duho to take that first L, just like a lot of these guys. And, the Artem Lobov fight, Artem's a 500 fighter. But my thing in this fight, all the top prospects at 145 have lost this year. Hanato Moicano, Jason Knight, Mirsad Bektik, Duho Choi, Yair Rodriguez, Gavin Tucker. I mean, we can go down the list. All of them except Brian Ortega. And the reason why Ortega is different than these guys, different than a few of these guys, is because, the guy's been facing adversity since his second UFC fight. Thiago Tavares fight, he got bloodied up bad. That was a tough fight where he had to pull that one out, man. That's a tough fight to go through that early in your career. And not to mention, he went 5 rounds back in RFA. And, then his fight with Diego Brandao got completely teed off on the first 2 rounds and comes back and pulls off a win. Then he comes back against Clay Guida and knocks Clay Guida out. So the guy comes back from adversity. And then his fight with Renato Moicano, that guy fight of the night, that was a complete war. And he pulled that one off. So if he loses this one, this will, just further prove that it's always time to take that first L. Like I said, all the top prospects at 145 lost this year, except Ortega. So we're about to find out if he's going to, take that first L this year. I'm going to take Ortega in this one. I think Cub's too sloppy, honestly. I think Ortega can honestly beat him on the feet, especially in a 5-round fight, man. One fuck up on the mat with that guy. He could be Tap City. And what are all of Cub Swanson's losses by? Submission. You know what I'm saying? So, this fight is kind of cut and dry. It might not be that simple. I know Cub's allegedly a black belt, but
he got his black belt online.
But the guy's been tapped out by Jens Pulver, Ricardo Lamas, Frankie Edgar, Max Holloway, and
Shannon Gugarty.
The guy's been tapped out several times. And 2 facial reconstructive surgery. This becomes a bloody back and forth war. But, the reason why I was most likely going to pass, even though if it was dog money, I would have considered it, but I was most likely going to pass just because of the undefeated thing, man. The undefeated thing is a big fucking thing in this game because like we saw last weekend, Justin Gaethje had to take that first L. And like we see it just about every weekend. That undefeated shit does not last long. If you're undefeated, that just means you haven't fought the right guys yet. And like I said, all of these undefeated guys are losing. Make no mistake about it. Darren Till's first loss is coming very soon. Make no mistake about it. These undefeated guys, betting on an undefeated guy at this level in the game is so sketchy in my opinion because it's just like, what's going to happen. So, I would have probably passed, but my pick is Ortega.
Man, Ortega is a very interesting individual. I hear a lot of people talking about how, Ortega, he doesn't shoot takedowns, therefore he's not going to get Cub down to the ground, which I think is such a dumb argument. And before I talk about why that's a dumb argument, even though Artem Lobov took down Cub Swanson 2 times off of kicks, reactionary takedowns, I want people to hear Brian Ortega's mindset about why he doesn't shoot for takedowns. And I'm taking this from a Luke Thomas interview he did a year ago.
Every fight starts standing up. Wrestling gets pretty tiring. You know, you don't want to be the guy shooting in, and then gassing your arms out. And what happens to a lot of people who are just purely jiu-jitsu based is they spend all their energy trying to take someone down, and when they're unsuccessful, now their hands are heavy, and they're getting punched in the face without being able to properly defend themselves. So my whole thing is let's bang a little bit, and through that chaos, then maybe I can seize the opportunity to grab a takedown or see something, you know? And that's it, man. You know, like, I just strike and they take me down, and then welcome to my world.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I got to say right there. He's able to create the chaos, and in those situations, he thrives, man. You know, for example, against Renato Moicano, and we were on Renato, and then he comes out there, he's boxing Renato up, he's mixing it up to the body, he's throwing uppercuts and landing, he's breaking Renato's nose. I was like, oh my God, man. And, you know, I used to think this guy was kind of like the Gilbert Burns of the featherweight division. What I mean by that is unbelievable jiu-jitsu, but he's a complete punching bag on the feet. And I was wrong, man, because like I said, he outboxed Renato, and people trying to act like Renato is, nothing special because they never heard of him. Well, Renato outstruck Jeremy Stevens for 3 straight rounds, the number 8 guy on planet Earth, man. And Renato's a very good volume striker. He's a good point fighter. And Brian T. City, even if he didn't get that finish, chances are he would have won a 29-28 in that fight because he won the first round on all 3 judges' scorecards. It would have came down to that third one, man. And with Cub Swanson, you know, I do think that he's going to probably get the better of the striking exchanges early on. But somewhere along the way, man, this fight's going to hit the mat one time in 25 minutes. And in that one time, that could be all she wrote, because Brian T. City on top of you or on the bottom, Triangle City, that's why they call him T. City. The dude's absolutely disgusting with his jiu-jitsu. I will go on record and say that he has the best jiu-jitsu in the 145-pound division. Better than Jose Aldo, who beat Cobrinha in a jiu-jitsu tournament. Better than the champ Max Holloway. I'm going to say Brian T. City Ortega has the best jiu-jitsu at 145 pounds. I mean, this is a guy that rolls with Henner Gracie every single day. You know what I'm saying, Shaq? We're not talking about, he bought a Gracie instructional video one time at a store and, trained a couple moves in his garage. No, we're talking about a guy that rolls with Henner Gracie every single day. Okay, like that's the kind of jiu-jitsu we're dealing with. And a lot of people like to talk about how, but he doesn't really take that many people down in his UFC career. Okay, well, let's talk about those people he's fought real quick. Thiago Tavares. Who takes down Thiago Tavares? Clay Guida. Who takes down Clay Guida? Renato Moicano. Who takes down Renato Moicano? You know what I'm saying? But what's so impressive is, on record you see, he TKO'd Tavares. 100 other people TKO'd Tavares. Yeah, but watch the fight. It's what happened. One does not simply sweep Thiago Tavares off your back, full mount the guy, and then pound him out. Beat him like that. And with Clay Guida, man, and first of all, I know people are under the impression that he lost the first 2 rounds. He lost the first round, he won the second round, and then he finished him in the third round. And the Renato Moicano fight, the best performance of his UFC career. He absolutely drowned one of the best prospects at 145 pounds. Now he's dealing with, this is the biggest fight of his life. He's dealing with someone who's had way more experience than him, just like everyone else he's fought. But, Cub Swanson, he's a household name, man. He's main eventing cards. He's a legend of the sport. I love Cub Swanson. Beautiful destruction. But when you watch Cub Swanson fight Dennis Seaver, when you watch Cub Swanson fight Dustin Poirier, that was his prime right there. That was a different guy than what we see today. The guy we see today is a guy that's had 2 broken jaws, 2 facial reconstruction surgeries, and he doesn't take as many risks as he used to. He's not as fast as he used to be. He still has, little flashes of Cub Swanson. Don't get me wrong. He'll still throw that left hook, that same side head kick, and then spin with a spinning heel kick. You know what I mean? He'll still do some flashy stuff, but it's not with the same authority that he used to have. I mean, you remember when he judo threw Dennis Seaver at UFC 162, man, and I was at that fight.
Judo threw my boy Poirier.
And bro, you could hear the reverberation on the octagon throughout the MGM Grand when he threw Dennis Seaver, man. He beat the shit out of Dennis Seaver after losing the first round. And, man, I felt like the Jeremy Stevens fight was the first time where we felt like, okay, maybe he's starting to slow down a little bit. Maybe he's not in his prime anymore. And then Frankie Edgar just absolutely destroyed him. Max Holloway put the icing on the cake. And then, Cub Swanson's been fighting some scrubs ever since then. Besides Duho, he's been fighting dudes that ain't even in the UFC, dudes that ain't even 500 fighters in the UFC. I'm talking about guys like Hakeran Diaz. I'm talking about guys like Artem Lobov. Yes, he did hand Duho Choi his first ever loss, and he could hand Ortega his first loss, but it's a different matchup. Duho is going to stand in that pocket for 3 straight rounds and bang with him, and I believe Ortega will as well. However, the difference here is if the fight hits the mat one time with Duho, and you ain't got shit to worry about. The fight hits the mat one time with Ortega, it's like jumping in the middle of the ocean with a great white shark and expecting to survive. You're just not going to. It doesn't work like that. So, I think somewhere along the way, Cub Swanson's going to throw a right roundhouse. He's going to throw one of his fucking cartwheel kicks. It's going to get caught. He's going to end up on his back. And from right there, it's going to be game, set, and match. I don't know if it's going to be in the first round. I don't know if it's going to be in the 5th round. But bottom line, there's going to be one time in these 25 minutes when this fight hits the mat and the real black belt is going to drown the dude that bought his black belt off the internet. You know what I'm saying, man? The dude that got his black belt in his cereal box. You know what I'm saying, man? So I got Brian T. City Ortega by finish here. Now, if Cub Swanson comes out here and hands him his first loss, hey, my hat's off to the vet, man. I hope they pay you in Bellator. I can't wait to see you fight Manny Sanchez. But I got to go with Brian T. City Ortega inside the distance. Now we got to hit up Kyle Marley for the Big Marley Minute. And joining us now on the Big Marley Minute is Big Marley himself. Big Marley, what's going on, man?
Not a lot, man. I'm looking forward to another weekend of fights. I like this string we got going on.
Yes, sir. And, man, you've been killing it for a while, but, dude, like, now they're flying you out to the headquarters, man. What's the deal here?
No, I'm not the headquarters. The headquarters are in Boston, I think. I haven't been there yet, but I'm going to be at the World Championship in Miami for football. I'm going to be in the Pick'em Championship qualifier competing against 29 other people for a $100K top prize. So hoping to get that.
Holy shit. How life-changing would that be?
It'd be nice. I don't know how it would change my life at this point, but I'm sure it would help.
Yeah, no, it's like you have a whole other side to you. We didn't even know you were that deep into the football game.
I've been into football since I was a little kid, so before I even knew what MMA was. But MMA's kind of just taken over recently.
That's what's up. I'm actually going to my first Falcons game tomorrow, Thursday, at the new stadium, man, so I'm pretty pumped.
Oh, damn, that's awesome. I'll have to bet them since you'll be there. Good luck.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But, dude, let's get right down to business, man, because, it's interesting. There's some favorites I'm liking. There's some dogs I'm liking. But first and foremost, I know Eryk Anders is pretty expensive here, but you saw that performance he had against Rafael Natal. And, the dude's a D1 linebacker, and now he's in the UFC, and he can fight his ass off. He can knock dudes out. Are you looking to make him one of the big favorites you put in your lineup?
Yeah, I can see that happening. I was pretty heavy on him in that first fight, and he scored 122.5 points. So I like that on my team, and it's going to be hard to stay away from him in this fight. It's just, am I going to pick him over the other people up there with him? But he is my pick. I'm not going to have any of his opponent. He would be the one to go with.
Yeah, and man, a bantamweight fight between Iuri Alcantara and Alejandro Perez, it's so interesting because Yuri's a finisher when he wins fights, but he also has the tendency to drop the ball. And against a guy like Alejandro Perez, who's a master at weaseling these decisions, it can get pretty intriguing, man. It can get pretty interesting. So are you thinking a total pass, or are you favoring a side? What do you think?
I don't think I would pass. I would rather target both sides than pass on this fight. Alcantara is my pick. I think he's going to win this fight. He should win it pretty dominantly, but with him, you just never know what Alcantara is going to show up. So that's why I also like Perez in this fight, because Alcantara is 8,800 on DraftKings, and we got Perez at 7,400. So that's a lot of savings, and you got to find the dogs. So I don't mind that one at all. I'm just going to have to get a feel of how popular he's going to be, because if that's where everyone's going, then I think I would rather fade it and just go with Alcantara. But I do like both sides of that fight.
Man, another really good bantamweight fight between Luke Sanders and Andre Soukhamthath. I got to ask you, how many points did Luke Sanders score in his last fight against Iuri? Even though he lost, he must have scored a lot, man. He beat his ass.
Yeah, man. In a second round submission loss, he scored 52 points still. So I love that pace, and I love this fight for that reason. He's going to put up the pace. That's going to score a lot of points. Even if he loses, that's going to push Soukhamthath to fight harder and faster, and whoever wins is just going to score really high. So, again, I like both sides of this fight, but Luke Sanders is my main pick. I love his pace. I think he's going to be going for the takedowns, and I think he could score well over 100. So he might be one of my top picks on this card, but I'll have some Andre as well.
Sticking in the bantamweight division, Marlon Moraes is taking on Aljamain Sterling. Another great fight. I'm personally leaning towards Marlon Moraes. I think the kicks are going to be big weapons, and we've seen in these fights that Aljamain Sterling has been winning. Against guys like Barao, guys like Tanquinho Mendes. Once those guys slow down in the second round, he really takes over and he's able to dominate them. But I don't think a guy like Marlon Moraes is going to slow down after that first round. I think that he can keep his pace up all three. I'm going with Marlon. I'm not exactly sure how many points he's going to score, though, considering this fight will go the 3-round distance, at least on paper. What are you thinking, man?
Yeah, I'm going to go with, I think my pick is Marlon as well, but I just don't think he's going to score enough points. So I would rather fade this fight because if I'm picking him, in his last fight, he only scored 58 points and a win in the decision, and now he's priced at 8,600 on DraftKings. So I don't see him getting the 10x of that, getting 86 points. I just don't see it happening. So I would actually rather lean Sterling in DraftKings or fade this fight altogether because I don't see it being high scoring at all. I think this is the fight to fade.
So, Kyle, on Half the Battle, we've given out back-to-back max bet winners. Now we're looking to make it back-to-back-to-back max bet winners because we took that Davi Ramos minus 180. Now it's minus 360. You know the deal here, Kyle. I mean, I'm guessing he's got to be one of the gems here. I know he didn't score that much against Sergino at 170 pounds, but here at 155 against Chris Grutzemacher, who is a walking punching bag, Davi's going to be in my lineups.
Yeah, I mean, I love the bet you got. Honestly, if I got those kind of odds, I might even be able to stay away in DraftKings, but I did not get that great line that you got, so I'm going to have to get my exposure through DraftKings instead. He's my pick. I'm not going to have any Chris. But again, it's just, am I going to go with him over Alcantara and these other guys at the top? I'm not exactly sure, but he will be in some of my lineups. And nice snipe on that bet.
And, I mean, you feel the same way about Trevin Giles. He's also highly priced, but he also destroyed his opponent in his debut. This is a different fight, though. I mean, Antonio Braga Neto, he is coming off the layoff, but you remember, he tapped out Anthony Smith in the first round. Anthony Smith now has a big fight with Thiago Marreta, so it's not like Braga Neto isn't used to the high-level competition. It's just he's been out forever. We know there's new drug testing in this sport, and Trevin Giles is a beast. So you think, there's, again, one of those situations where it's like, do we favor Trevin Giles over those other big favorites?
This is another one where I'm looking to target both sides. I mean, Giles scored 133 in his last fight, so, I mean, that's just perfect. That's what you want every single fight to happen. So you got to have a few lines with him at least. But he's one of the most expensive guys on the card. So I also want to have a few lineups with Neto as well because he's one of the cheapest. And if I get him, I can afford a few of those guys that we were just talking about at the top. So that just buys so much salary where I'm going to have some lineups with both of these guys because I just think this is going to be one of the better fights to target. I think it might be a submission either way, early, or it could just be a lot of ground transitions and rack up points that way.
So, co-main event of the evening, we got the always exciting Jason the Kid Knight, and he's taking on Gabriel Benitez. And I mean, if you've seen that Gabriel Benitez left kick, you know it's a serious weapon. But Jason Knight has a way of getting these fights to the ground, and we have seen that the takedown defense is a weakness for Gabriel. So, I think this fight could be a 3-round war. I also think it could, someone could impose their will and get a stoppage. Now, here's the question though. I have a feeling they're going to have Knight very expensive, and I'd personally pass. What's your opinion?
Yeah, he is the most expensive on the card. So that makes me have a little bit less interest in him. I think he's a good pick to win this fight. So maybe if I really need some sort of investment in it, I would rather just bet him with the line. Because I don't know how high he's going to score. I don't know if he's going to be the highest scoring guy on this card. So I might want to go with those guys below him, like Anders or Giles or Sanders, and then just stay away from this fight. But I don't think Benitez is going to win. He can't stop a takedown for shit. So Knight is definitely my pick to win. It's just I don't know how many takedowns he's going to want to get. I think he's going to try and have some fun on the feet and get a fight of the night bonus. So I'm just more looking forward to watching this fight than I am investing in it in DraftKings. But nice to pick.
And the main event, man, I mean, look, Brian T. City Ortega is taking on Killer Cub Swanson. A great main event. Man, Cub Swanson in his prime, dude. I mean, he was a very scary dude, but now, it's a new era of the sport. Brian T. City Ortega probably has the best jiu-jitsu in the featherweight division. We know Cub Swanson's been tapped out 5 times in his career. I mean, are you thinking that this is going to be the classic first L for Ortega? Kind of like every single featherweight prospect has taken that first L this year. You saw Jason Knight, Renato Moicano, Duho Choi late last year, Gavin Tucker. All these guys are taking that first L, recently. Or, are you thinking Brian Ortega is going to send Cub Swanson off to Bellator?
I mean, we already know what's going to happen here. It's an Ortega third-round submission, isn't it? That's
Yes,
what
sir.
happens all the time. But no, I think this might be his first L. I bet Swanson earlier today at plus 100. So my pick is Swanson, but man, it's gonna be a tricky fight because he's not going to try and take it to the ground, so he's not going to get those takedown points in DraftKings. So I did want some sort of investment in this fight. That's why I bet Swanson. Maybe I'll stack this fight in cash and get some hedge life both ways there. But it's going to be a tricky one in GPP. So I got to kind of figure out who's going to be higher owned and maybe fade the public that way. But I have interest in both these guys. I just can't really make a pick quite yet in DraftKings because I don't really have a judge on the ownership yet. But I like both these guys. I have no idea what's going to happen in the fight. I think Swanson's just more active. And if he can stay away from that submission, I don't think he loses. But can he stay away from that submission? I'm not sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It's tough.
As far as projecting ownership, not that that's my strong suit or anything like that, Kyle. Based on Twitter, lots of people are on Cub Swanson here, but it's interesting because the number keeps going in Brian Ortega's direction.
Right, yeah, I was thinking that as well. I mean, I was shocked that Cub Swanson was the underdog. That's why I had to take the shot at it. But it also worries me, like, why is Ortega the favorite at this point? So I don't know, man. It's got me racking my brain over this one. But like I said, I do want some hedge life. Maybe I'll stack this in cash and just roll with my Swanson bet and fade it in GPPs because it's a tough one to decide on. And there's so many other people towards the top that I do want to get. So it might have to be a stars and scrubs lineup for me.
So real quick before I let you go, this fight between Albert Morales and Benito Lopez, they're minus 110 apiece. It's a dead pick 'em. And I just got to know Big Marley's perspective as a gambling man, as a DK player, because look, man, Benito Lopez, in that first round, the kid's throwing flying knees, the kid's trying to take your head off, but we know Albert Morales has been in there with the Sharks since his UFC debut, and, man, his UFC experience could be a big factor if he gets past that first round. You have an opinion on this one?
Yeah, I mean, Morales has been thrown to the wolves since he got into the UFC, so I'm really looking forward to this fight. I think he can pull this off, and he's actually a slight underdog on DraftKings. He's 8,000, while Lopez is 8,200. So let me just save that $200 if I'm trying to go to the mid-range. I like Morales here, and I might even like him more than Swanson and Ortega. So that gives me more of a reason to fade that other fight in GPPs because I do like Morales here.
Big Marley, anything we're missing here on the card?
That's it, bro. Good luck this weekend. I like that bet. Get that money on Ramos.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Have fun when they fly you out, my man. I hope you kill it. I hope you get that 100K. Everybody, make sure you follow this man at Big Marley 3. Kyle, any message for the fans before we speak next week?
Good luck, everybody. I got head-to-heads posted, but if you come at the King, you best not miss.
And man, now they're flying Big Marley out to these places. Now he's bringing home. It's funny. We're talking about this guy bringing in 5K. We're talking about him bringing in 10K. This motherfucker's bringing in 20K per event this time, and now they're flying him out to the headquarters.
I mean, like the great Conor McGregor once said, you ain't bringing in multiple sevens like me. So shout out to Kyle Marley, man, bringing in big money, just making that half the battle brand what it is today.
Big money, Big Marley, and it's interesting because him and his wife just had their first baby, and I believe, I could be wrong, their baby was actually born the day after my birthday, so, got to represent the Libras, but bottom line, you'd think, this guy having a kid and stuff, maybe, he's got his priorities elsewhere. Maybe, he's got to take care of that. And now he's bringing in better numbers than he did before.
And I like what he said the other day. Somebody tweeted at him, what is your secrets for DraftKings, or what are your strategies or whatever? And he said hard work. And that's what me and you do. That's what half the battle team does. We put in more work. We got shit, that we already want to bet like a couple weeks from now, a month from now. You know what I'm saying? We plan ahead. And that's what separates Kyle and us from the rest.
I'm very much looking forward to these opportunities coming up. But before we talk about that, we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So, Shaq, what is the fight to watch for UFC Fresno?
The fight to watch, in my opinion, is going to be Gabriel Benitez and Jason Knight. Look, I can say whatever I want about Jason Knight, but the guy comes to fight, and like I said, the guy will not quit. I like that ability. That's why I'm not taking that shot on Gabriel plus 255, because I'm scared of Jason Knight. If you got money against Jason Knight, that's why I didn't bet Lamas, because I'm scared of Jason Knight. The guy will not quit. The guy's tenacious, and I feel like the matchup on the feet is going to be very interesting. I want to see if Gabriel's going to butcher him like I think he's going to butcher him, and I'm interested to see if Knight can, take him down for 3 rounds. So, and Jason Knight's always getting 50K bonuses for fight of the night or performance of the night. So I'm interested to see that fight.
Yeah, and obviously Gabriel Benitez versus Jason Knight's one of the fights to watch. And I normally don't pick the main events for the fight to watch, but come on. When you got Brian T. City Ortega taking on Killer Cub Swanson, that is obviously the fight to watch. We're dealing with a true vet of the game in Cub Swanson against, the... What degree black belt is Brian T. City? It's got to be a 2nd degree or 3rd degree by now. If he's 1st degree, then oh my God, that's the best 1st degree black belt I've ever seen inside the UFC's octagon. But bottom line is, man, this is going to be a true fight while it lasts. There's not going to be someone humping someone else's leg. The crowd's not going to be booing. The crowd's going to be on their feet when Brian T. City Ortega and Cub Swanson throw down. So for that reason, that is the fight to watch. Now, Shaq, who is the fighter to watch?
I'm actually go with 2 fighters to watch. I got my max bet on my boy Davi Ramos. This is a perfect opportunity for him to go in there and, get his first UFC win off that Sergio Moraes fight, which I thought he performed very well up a weight class. And he's got the perfect tailor-made matchup for him. And let's go, Davi Ramos. Let's butcher this kid. And, my other fighter to watch, it's actually another fight to watch, is Marlon Moraes and Aljamain Sterling, because I believe this is like a crossroads fight in a sense, because for Marlon Moraes, if he can beat Aljamain Sterling, now he's a top 5 bantamweight. You know what I'm saying? And the loser of this fight, they'll never be in those title pictures ever again, in my opinion. They're going to have to take a long road back. And 135, man, 135 is arguably up there with 155 and 145, man. 135 is getting deeper and deeper by the minute. There's no more chumps at 135, I'll tell you that. We still got a couple of chumps like Henry Briones and, these other.
No one's in the top 15 as a chump, let's put it like that.
Exactly, you know what I'm saying? But we do need to get, like the Eddie Winans out of there, and we need to get a couple guys out of there. But 135 ain't no slouch anymore, man. So the loser of this fight has got a long road back, and the winner of this fight is 1 or 2 wins away from a title shot. So this is a crossroads fight for both of those guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you know what? Since you went with 2 fighters to watch, I'm going to go with 2 fighters to watch as well. Firstly, Eryk Anders, man. It's not often that we see someone make the transition from, a D1 football player to now he's having success inside the octagon, and he's doing it with authority. He's looking like an absolute killer out there. He beat a serious vet in his debut. Now he's taking on this up-and-coming kid, and I can't wait to see the force that Eryk Anders brings inside the octagon this Saturday night. And my other fighter to watch is Andre Soukhamthath. Look, man, his back's up against the wall. He lost 2 very close split decisions. We saw flashes in there. He's taking on another tough opponent in Luke Sanders, who, you know what I'm saying, Luca beat down Iuri Alcantara before he got caught. Andre Soukhamthath needs this win more than anybody on this entire card needs a win. So for that reason, he is the fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, we did it, man. It's going down this Saturday, UFC Fresno. We're looking to make it 3 back-to-back-to-back max bet winners, which we gave out for free, by the way. And hopefully Davi Ramos takes care of business here, man.
Yeah, and, I feel as if he will take care of business. Like we said, we're giving out the free winners. I thank everyone for the support I get on Twitter, man. All the good messages. If you fuck with me, I fuck with you. I love everyone that supports me. So follow me, MMA Genius 05. Follow TSM_MMA. Follow my Instagram, TSM_bets. And, give me feedback whenever you feel like.
Yeah, no, thanks to all the fans. And thanks to the haters, too, man. As long as you care, That's all I care about, as long as you entertain, because we got these people that they want to talk about, a 2-unit loss on a plus 250, but they'll obviously never mention the back-to-back 5-unit winners or the 3-unit winners. They only want to talk about the little losses, and that's fine. I appreciate you listening to our show. But the bottom line is the long-term winning results will remain. About to be my 3rd winning year in a row. And that's the bottom line. And we're going to close this year out with a bang. That's all I got to say about that. Oh, yeah, and I got to let you guys know where to follow me. Follow me at Best Fight Picks. Go to bestfightpicks.com for the plays. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. Hook up those 5-star reviews. Follow Shaq at MMA Genius 05. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.